use of chemicals. When these things are released into the ground or into the land in so great quantities that is harmful to man, it tends or it leads to land pollution. Now, causes of land pollution include dumping of refuse, sewage, metal scraps, plastics or plastic waste, chemicals, oil spillage, fertilizer, etc. in an area. Effect of land pollution. Let's look at effects of land pollution. It leads to offensive odor. When these wastes are disposed indiscriminately in an area, it can lead to offensive odor, making people living in that area very uncomfortable. It can lead to poisonous, or it can be poisonous to man and animals. It also kills some useful soil organisms and leads to soil infertility. How can we control land pollution? This can be done by burning of refuse in incinerator, an improper or proper sewage disposal, and legislation against dumping of waste indiscriminately should be, enacted. And fertilizers, pesticides should be applied as prescribed. Some persons apply these chemicals or pesticides or fertilizers, in quantities that are far beyond the prescribed quantities, thus posing danger on the fertility of the soil. Oil pipelines should be maintained and checked regularly to avoid spillage. Now, oil spillage affects greatly the soil, and pipelines are usually, buried in the soil. And over time, if they are not properly checked or maintained, there could be corrosion, it could be, puncture in these pipes, leading to gradual seepage, gradual leakage of the oil, which affect the soil. So these pipelines should be maintained and checked regularly to ensure that there is no spillage. Now let us talk about water pollution. Water pollution also has to do with the release of some substances like chemicals, waste into water in large quantities that are harmful to man, animals, and plants. And this could be caused by the discharge of industrial waste into the water, could also be caused by oil spillage, fishing with chemicals such as gamalin-20, and the use of detergents in water bodies. Acid rain can also cause water pollution. Now, effects of water pollution include death of aquatic animals and plants. When the water is polluted, it becomes harmful, or it becomes uncomfortable for the aquatic animals and plants, and eventually die off. There is reduction in recreational values of the water. Water that was initially useful in terms of recreation, because it has been polluted, there is a drastic reduction in its value recreationally. And there is also causes, or it can also lead to waterborne diseases. When the water is polluted and people drink of it, it can cause waterborne disease. What disease caused by water can easily be spread all over an area as a result of water pollution. Now, water pollution can also render water unfit for domestic and other purposes. So with this in mind, how can we also control water pollution? The government or agencies in charge should put forward legislation on the use of water bodies. People should not be allowed to fish with gamalin-20 or other chemicals that tend to pollute the water. People should not be allowed to empty waste into the water. People should not be allowed to, defecate in the water bodies. These are ways of preventing or controlling water pollution. And people should be made to understand the impact of some of these human activities on the water and the environment at large. And there should be, in a way, the government should provide public facilities or utilities like toilets and incinerators. Now, I live in a place where disposal of refuse is a very big problem. And this is because there are no readily available waste bins provided by the government to empty this waste. And you find people wrapping their waste, emptying them indiscriminately on the streets. Many times people do this at night for fear of being caught. So you look at it critically, you do not blame them because the government has not made it, has not provided these utilities that will enhance disposal of this waste, and in turn it has a way of affecting the environment. Apart from polluting the land, apart from polluting the air, it can lead to flooding. It can lead to other health-related issues, because when these things degrade, many of them don't degrade, they are non-biodegradable, and as such, it poses severe environmental problems. And some persons even run into troubles of being caught at times, and they demand some fee to be paid. But do you blame them? You don't need to blame them, because you don't expect them to harbor their waste with them inside their homes. So they always look for means of discarding or jettisoning this waste. So agents or government should provide public utilities. So we're talking about saying that people should not be allowed to defecate in water bodies. The government or those in charge made available utilities like toilets for people who may not be opportune to have toilet facilities at home, or good toilet facilities at home to take care of themselves. So this is also a way of controlling pollution. In as much as the people will be educated and made to know the dangers involved in disposing their waste or defecating in water bodies, or even having their bath in water bodies, the government should also understand that there are some less privileged people around who may not have these facilities, handy around them. So they will always look for means or ways to empty themselves, So provisions should be made, adequate provisions should be made to cater for all these things in order to make the environment safe and friendly for us today and for generations to come. So let's take some few questions and we proceed. Now, question 1 says, what is environmental hazard? Now, environmental hazard could be natural and it could be man or human induced. It has to do with any event that causes severe environmental problem. An example, we have flooding, we have pollution, we have volcanoes, we have tornadoes, some of which are naturally, are natural, whereas the others are man-induced as a result of quest of man for better living standard. Question 2 says, list 6 environmental hazards. We have air pollution, we have drought, we have desert encroachment, we have flooding, we have land pollution, we have water pollution, we also have bush burning and tornadoes. Oil spillage could also be an environmental problem. So let's take the last question, which says, explain any 3 of the above listed environmental hazards. We would talk about, out of the many we have mentioned, we will consider just 3. Let's start with drought. Drought has to do with the prolonged and abnormal moisture deficiency and a general state of dryness. It's usually caused by absence of rainfall, high rate of evapotranspiration, change in weather and climatic condition of an area, and high daily temperature without corresponding rainfall. And this could lead to crop failure. Streams and river may also dry up, and ultimately it can lead to loss of lives and properties. And we'll take another one, which will be flooding. Like we said earlier, flooding has to do with excessive volume of water in an area that was usually or initially not waterlogged. Usually caused by excessive rainfall in that area, improper disposal of waste, and poor drainage system. The last one here is desert encroachment. Desert encroachment here is the spreading or extension of deserts to areas which were originally not deserts before. And this is caused usually by overgrazing, bush burning, high speed of wind, deforestation, and overcultivation of any given area. Now, let's look at environmental conservation. Environmental conservation. We've talked about environmental resources. We've talked about environmental problems or hazards. Let's consider now environmental conservation. This, is the preservation of natural resources in the environment from waste, loss, or exploitation through the judicious or rational use of these resources in order to ensure